Marcus Johnson stood in the elegant lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel, his tired eyes taking in the polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers. After a 6-hour flight and a bumpy taxi ride across town, all he wanted was to check into his room and collapse into bed before tomorrow's important business meeting. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a name tag reading Sarah, barely looked up from her computer as Marcus approached the front desk. Her fingers tapped against the keyboard as she finished whatever task occupied her attention. "Good evening," Marcus said politely, setting his leather briefcase down beside him. "I have a reservation under Johnson." Sarah finally looked up, her eyes quickly scanning Marcus from head to toe. He was dressed in a well-tailored navy suit, though slightly wrinkled from travel. Something in her expression shifted subtly. "I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat the name?" she asked, her voice noticeably cooler than the welcoming tone she had used with the couple who checked in before him. "Johnson. Marcus Johnson. I made the reservation 3 weeks ago for a 5-night stay, executive suite." Sarah typed something into her computer, her brow furrowing as she stared at the screen. "I'm not seeing anything under that name. Are you sure you have the right hotel?" Marcus frowned and pulled out his phone. "Yes, I'm certain. I have the confirmation email right here." He showed her the screen displaying his reservation details. Sarah glanced at it briefly. "That's strange. The system shows we're fully booked tonight. There must have been some error with your reservation." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to remain calm despite his exhaustion. "Could you please check again? I specifically booked the executive suite for my business trip. This confirmation clearly shows everything was confirmed." "I'm sorry, sir, but there's nothing I can do. We have no vacancies tonight." Her tone was dismissive as she looked past him to the next person in line. "Perhaps you could try the Budget Inn 5 blocks down." Marcus stood his ground. "I'd like to speak to your manager, please." Sarah's smile tightened. "I'm afraid the manager isn't available right now." A well-dressed man who had been observing from across the lobby approached. He was in his 60s with silver hair and carried himself with authority. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his eyes moving between Marcus and the receptionist. "This gentleman seems to have a reservation issue," Sarah explained quickly. "But we're fully booked tonight." The older man extended his hand to Marcus. "I'm Richard Wilson, a hotel owner. Let me see what I can do to help." Marcus shook his hand firmly and explained the situation. Mr. Wilson examined the confirmation email on Marcus's phone carefully. "This is clearly a valid reservation," Wilson stated, giving Sarah a sharp look. "And I know for a fact we have 3 executive suites available tonight." Sarah's face flushed red. "I must have been looking at the wrong screen," she mumbled. Wilson turned back to Marcus with an apologetic smile. "Mr. Johnson, please accept my sincere apologies for this misunderstanding. Your suite is ready, and I'd like to offer your stay complimentary, given the inconvenience." As Marcus followed the bellhop to the elevator, he couldn't help but wonder if what had just happened was simply a computer error or something more troubling. Either way, he was too tired to dwell on it now. Tomorrow was an important day, and he needed rest. Little did anyone know that Marcus Johnson's presence at the Grand Meridian would change everything about this hotel in less than 48 hours. The next morning, Marcus woke early despite his late check-in. Sunlight streamed through the half-open curtains of his executive suite as he prepared for his business meeting. He dressed methodically in a charcoal gray suit, his movements precise and focused. Today's meeting wasn't just any appointment, it was the reason he had traveled across the country. After a quick breakfast in the hotel restaurant, where he noticed the waitstaff treated him with noticeably better service than the front desk had the night before, Marcus stepped into the lobby. He was scheduled to meet his business partners in one of the hotel's conference rooms at 9:00 a.m. Richard Wilson, the hotel owner who had intervened last night, spotted Marcus and approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Johnson, I hope you found the accommodations to your liking after last night's unfortunate incident," Wilson said, extending his hand. "The room is excellent, thank you," Marcus replied, shaking Wilson's hand firmly. "Though I must admit, last night's welcome was less than ideal." Wilson's expression grew serious. "I want to personally apologize again. That's not how we do business at the Grand Meridian. I've already spoken with Sarah about her behavior." Marcus nodded, appreciating the older man's directness. "I appreciate that. Actually, If you have a few minutes after my meeting today, I'd like to speak with you about something important. Of course, Wilson replied, looking slightly curious. I'll be in my office until 6 o'clock p.m. Feel free to stop by any time after your meeting. As Wilson walked away, Marcus checked his watch. He had 30 minutes before his meeting began, enough time to review his presentation one more time. The conference room was impeccably prepared when Marcus arrived. 5 people were already seated around the large mahogany table, all representatives from Horizon Investments, one of the largest hotel investment groups in the country. Marcus, right on time as always, said Janet Chen, the head of acquisitions at Horizon. She rose to greet him with a professional handshake. Everyone, this is Marcus Johnson, the financial analyst I've been telling you about. Marcus set down his briefcase and opened it, removing several folders of documents. Thank you all for meeting me here. I've been analyzing the Grand Meridian for the past 6 months, and I believe it presents an exceptional investment opportunity for Horizon. For the next 2 hours, Marcus delivered a detailed presentation on the hotel's financial performance, market position, and growth potential. His analysis was thorough, highlighting the property's strong points while honestly addressing areas that needed improvement. The Grand Meridian has a prime location and excellent bones, Marcus explained, showing slides of competitor analysis. However, there are clear issues with staff training and management oversight that are affecting guest satisfaction scores. With the right leadership and a targeted renovation budget of approximately $4.2 million, we could increase revenue by an estimated 32% within 18 months. The representatives from Horizon listened intently, occasionally asking pointed questions that Marcus answered with confidence and data-backed insights. By the end of the presentation, the atmosphere in the room had shifted from professional curiosity to genuine interest. Janet closed her portfolio and exchanged glances with her colleagues. Marcus, this is precisely the kind of analysis we were hoping for. Your recommendation to acquire this property aligns with our expansion strategy. Then shall we move forward with the offer we discussed? Marcus asked. Absolutely, Janet confirmed. We're prepared to make an offer to Mr. Wilson today, pending final approval from our board. The offer terms you suggested seem appropriate given your valuation. As the meeting concluded and handshakes were exchanged, none of the hotel staff who passed by the conference room realized that the very future of the Grand Meridian was being decided right before their eyes, with the man who had been denied service just hours earlier playing a central role in that decision. At precisely 3:30 p.m., Marcus knocked on the door of Richard Wilson's office. The meeting with Horizon Investments had gone even better than expected, and now came the crucial part of his day. Come in, Wilson called from inside. Marcus entered the spacious office decorated with photos of the Grand Meridian throughout its 75-year history. Wilson sat behind an ornate desk, looking up from a stack of papers. Mr. Johnson, please have a seat. Wilson gestured to a leather chair across from him. How did your meeting go? Very productive, Marcus replied, settling into the chair, which is actually what I wanted to discuss with you. Wilson leaned forward, his expression curious. Oh, Mr. Wilson, I'm not just a guest at your hotel. I'm a financial analyst specializing in the hospitality industry, Marcus began, his voice steady and professional. For the past 6 months, I've been conducting an extensive evaluation of the Grand Meridian for Horizon Investments. Wilson's eyebrows rose in surprise. Horizon? The investment group? Marcus nodded. Yes, I've been analyzing everything from your financial statements to guest satisfaction scores. Today's meeting was to present my findings and recommendation. Wilson's expression changed as the implications became clear. He straightened in his chair, suddenly looking much older than he had the night before. I see, Wilson said quietly. And what was your recommendation? That Horizon should acquire the Grand Meridian, Marcus stated simply. The property has tremendous potential, but it also has significant challenges. Wilson sighed deeply, running a hand through his silver hair. I won't pretend I'm surprised. The hotel has been struggling for the past few years. Rising costs, increased competition, and, he hesitated, certain operational issues have made it difficult to maintain profitability. Like the incident last night, Marcus said directly. Wilson nodded, having the decency to look embarrassed. Yes, like that. I've owned this hotel for 30 years, Mr. Johnson. My wife and I built it into something special. But I'm getting older, and my children have no interest in the hospitality business. Marcus pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the desk. Horizon is prepared to make you an offer today. It's fair, above market value, actually, because the location and structure are exceptional. What the hotel needs is fresh leadership and strategic investment. Wilson opened the folder and studied the offer letter inside. His eyes widened slightly at the figure presented. This is generous, he admitted. Horizon values this property's potential, Marcus explained. With the right management and proper staff training, the Grand Meridian could regain its position as the premier hotel in this city. Wilson was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photos on his wall. When I stepped in last night, I had no idea who you were. I just saw someone being treated poorly in my hotel. Which speaks to your character, Marcus acknowledged. But it also highlights the problem. You can't be everywhere at once, and the culture needs to improve. The staff should treat every guest with respect, not just when the owner is watching. Wilson nodded slowly, then looked Marcus in the eye. Before I make any decision, I need to ask, what would happen to my staff if I accept this offer? Most would stay, Marcus answered honestly. There would be a thorough evaluation period, additional training, and yes, some changes in management positions. But the goal isn't to clean house. It's to build on what works and fix what doesn't. Wilson picked up a pen from his desk, turning it thoughtfully between his fingers. And what would your role be in all this, Mr. Johnson? Just the analyst who recommended the acquisition? Marcus smiled slightly. Actually, if you accept the offer, Horizon wants me to oversee the transition and serve as interim general manager for the first year. The irony wasn't lost on either man. The same hotel where Marcus had faced discrimination less than 24 hours ago might soon be under his management. Life had a strange way of coming full circle. I'd like some time to consider the offer, Wilson said finally. Of course, Marcus replied, standing to leave. Horizon can give you 48 hours. That evening, Marcus sat in the hotel's upscale restaurant, enjoying a quiet dinner while reflecting on the day's events. The chef had prepared an excellent steak, and the waitstaff had been attentive and professional, far different from his initial reception. As he cut into his steak, Marcus noticed Sarah, the receptionist from the previous night, enter the restaurant. She was no longer in her uniform, instead dressed in casual clothes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked around nervously before approaching the bar. Marcus observed as she ordered a drink, her shoulders tense. He could tell something was bothering her. After a moment of consideration, he signaled to his server. Could you send that young woman at the bar another of whatever she's drinking? On my tab, he requested. The server nodded and went to the bar. Moments later, Sarah turned in surprise as the bartender pointed toward Marcus's table. Their eyes met across the room. Sarah froze, clearly uncertain what to do. Finally, after what seemed like a long internal debate, she picked up her drink and walked hesitantly to his table. Mr. Johnson, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for the drink, but I don't think I should accept it. Please, sit down, Marcus said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Just for a minute. Reluctantly, Sarah sat, placing her drink carefully on the table. I want to apologize for last night, she began. Mr. Wilson gave me a serious warning today. I nearly lost my job. Marcus studied her face. Can I ask you something, Sarah? Why did you tell me there were no rooms available when there clearly were? Sarah looked down at her hands. I don't have a good answer that would make it okay. I'm not looking for an excuse, Marcus clarified. I'm genuinely curious about what was going through your mind. She took a deep breath. Honestly, it wasn't the first time I'd done that. Some of the senior staff, they have this unspoken practice of redirecting certain guests to other hotels when we're not fully booked. They say it's to maintain the hotel's image. She made air quotes with her fingers, clearly uncomfortable. I've been here less than 6 months, and I just followed along. Marcus nodded slowly, taking this in, and Mr. Wilson doesn't know about this practice. I don't think so. He's not here most evenings. It's usually just the night manager and us front desk staff. Who's the night manager? Marcus asked, taking a sip of his water. Robert Keller, He's worked here for 15 years. He's the one who... She trailed off, looking embarrassed. The one who taught you this practice? Marcus finished for her. Sarah nodded. I know it's wrong. I knew it when I was doing it. I needed this job. My mom's sick, and the health insurance here is good. Her voice trembled slightly. That's not an excuse. I should have refused. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the restaurant manager, who approached their table with a concerned expression. Is everything all right here, Mr. Johnson? He asked, casting a suspicious glance at Sarah. Everything is fine, thank you, Marcus replied firmly. Miss Sarah and I are having a productive conversation. After the manager left, Sarah looked at Marcus with curiosity. The staff is treating you like royalty today. Did Mr. Wilson tell everyone to be extra nice to you or something? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Not exactly. Let's just say things at the Grand Meridian might be changing soon. You're not just a regular guest, are you? Sarah asked, suddenly more perceptive. No, Marcus admitted. I'm not. Before he could explain further, his phone buzzed with a message from Janet at Horizon. Wilson called. Wants to meet tomorrow morning. Sounds positive. Be ready. Marcus looked back at Sarah, making a decision. How much do you want to keep working here, Sarah? Enough to help make this place better? What do you mean? She asked, confusion evident on her face. I mean, if you had the chance to be part of transforming this hotel's culture, to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else, would you take it? Sarah sat straighter in her chair. In a heartbeat, I made a mistake following Robert's lead. I'd do anything to make it right. Marcus nodded. Good, then I might have a proposition for you tomorrow. For now, finish your drink and think about what kind of workplace you'd actually be proud to be part of. As Sarah left the restaurant 20 minutes later, she had no idea that the man she had denied service to just yesterday might soon determine the future of her career and the entire Grand Meridian Hotel. The next morning, the conference room buzzed with tension as Richard Wilson sat at the head of the table, flanked by his lawyer and financial advisor. Across from them sat Marcus, Janet Chen, and two executives from Horizon Investments. The documents for the potential sale of the Grand Meridian Hotel were spread across the polished mahogany surface. After careful consideration, I've decided to accept your offer, Wilson announced, his voice carrying a mix of resignation and relief. This hotel has been my life's work, but it's time to pass the torch. Janet smiled professionally. You built something remarkable, Mr. Wilson. We intend to honor that legacy while bringing the Grand Meridian into a new era. As the lawyers reviewed the final terms, Marcus studied Wilson's face. The older man seemed to have aged overnight, the weight of his decision evident in the new lines around his eyes. There's one condition I'd like to add, Wilson said suddenly, looking directly at Marcus. I want to stay on as a consultant for 6 months. Not to interfere, he clarified quickly, but to help with the transition, to share what I know about this place and its history. Marcus exchanged glances with Janet, who gave a subtle nod. I think that's reasonable, Marcus agreed. Your experience would be valuable during the transition period. The signing proceeded smoothly after that. By 11:30 a.m., ownership of the Grand Meridian Hotel had officially transferred to Horizon Investments. Wilson shook hands with everyone at the table, lingering when he reached Marcus. Take good care of her, he said quietly. We will, Marcus promised. After Wilson and his team departed, Janet turned to Marcus with a satisfied expression. Congratulations, Marcus. The board has officially approved your appointment as interim general manager, effective immediately. You have full authority to implement the changes we discussed. Marcus nodded, the responsibility settling on his shoulders. I'll need to address the staff as soon as possible, today, preferably. Already arranged, Janet replied. All department heads and staff representatives will gather in the main ballroom at 3 p.m. The full staff meeting will be tomorrow morning. As the Horizon executives left to finalize details, Marcus remained in the conference room, reviewing his notes for the upcoming meeting. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Come in, he called. To his surprise, Sarah entered, looking nervous but determined. Mr. Johnson, I hope I'm not interrupting, she began. There are rumors flying all over the hotel that we've been sold. Everyone's panicking about their jobs. Marcus gestured for her to sit. News travels fast. Yes, as of this morning, Horizon Investments has acquired the Grand Meridian. There will be an official announcement this afternoon. Sarah bit her lip. And what about? What you said last night? About making changes? I meant it, Marcus assured her. Starting with addressing the discriminatory practices you mentioned. Robert, the night manager, he's telling everyone that the new owners will fire half the staff, Sarah said anxiously. Is that true? Marcus shook his head. No, there will be changes, certainly, but mass firings aren't part of the plan. He paused, studying her. How would you feel about helping me identify the problems that need fixing? Sarah's eyes widened. Me? But I'm just a receptionist. And after how I treated you. Sometimes the people who've made mistakes have the clearest vision of what needs to change, Marcus replied. You recognized what you did was wrong. That's a start. What exactly are you offering? Sarah asked cautiously. I'm forming a transition team, staff members from different departments who can provide honest insight into the hotel's operations and culture. I'd like you to be part of it. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. Why would you trust me after what happened? I don't believe people should be defined solely by their worst moments, Marcus said simply. What matters is what you do next. Sarah sat straighter, a new determination in her eyes. If you're serious, then yes, I want to help make things right. Good, Marcus nodded. Then your first assignment is to discreetly observe the staff's reactions at today's announcement. Note who seems resistant to change, who seems relieved, and who seems genuinely interested in improvement. As Sarah left the conference room with a sense of purpose, Marcus turned his attention to preparing his address. In just a few hours, he would stand before the staff of the hotel that had once denied him service and introduce himself as their new general manager. Life had indeed come full circle. The Grand Meridian's ballroom, usually reserved for elegant weddings and corporate galas, now held rows of chairs filled with anxious hotel staff. The room hummed with nervous whispers as department heads tried to maintain composure while line staff exchanged worried glances. At precisely 3 p.m., Janet Chen walked onto the small stage set up at the front of the room. The chatter immediately died down. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Janet Chen, head of acquisitions at Horizon Investments, she began, her voice clear and professional. As you may have heard, Horizon has acquired the Grand Meridian Hotel, effective today. I'd like to introduce you to the person who will be leading this hotel through its transition period and serving as your new general manager, Marcus Johnson. Marcus stepped onto the stage, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit. A collective murmur swept through the crowd as many recognized him as a recent guest. In the third row, Robert Keller, the night manager, visibly paled. Thank you, Ms. Chen, Marcus said, taking his position at the podium. He surveyed the room, noting the mix of confusion, fear, and curiosity on the faces before him. In the back, he spotted Sarah, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. I know transitions can be unsettling, Marcus began, so let me start by addressing your most immediate concern, your jobs. Horizon has not acquired this hotel to downsize its staff. The Grand Meridian's greatest asset is its people, and we need your experience and dedication. A visible wave of relief passed through the room, though some still looked skeptical. That said, Marcus continued, his tone shifting slightly, there will be changes. The Grand Meridian has lost its way in recent years. Guest satisfaction scores have declined. Reviews mention inconsistent service, and in some cases, he paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. Certain guests have been made to feel unwelcome based on factors that have nothing to do with their ability to pay for quality service. Robert Keller shifted uncomfortably in his seat. A few other staff members looked down at their hands. I'm not here to point fingers or dwell on past mistakes, Marcus assured them. I'm here to help this hotel reclaim its reputation for excellence, excellence that applies to every guest who walks through our doors. Marcus outlined his vision for the hotel's future, renovated facilities, updated training programs, and a renewed commitment to exceptional service for all guests. As he spoke, you could see the tension in the room gradually giving way to cautious optimism. Starting tomorrow, I'll be meeting with each department to better understand your challenges and ideas. I'm also forming a transition team composed of staff from various levels to provide insights and help implement changes. This is a collaborative process. Your input matters. After Marcus concluded his remarks and opened the floor for questions, hands shot up across the room. He answered each question directly, whether about job security, upcoming renovations, or changes to hotel policies. When the formal meeting ended, Marcus made himself available in the ballroom as staff members approached with more personal concerns. He noticed Robert Keller hanging back, clearly wanting to speak but waiting until there were fewer people around. Finally, when most had left, Keller approached. "Mr. Johnson," he began stiffly, "I believe we should discuss the misunderstanding from the other night." "I think we should," Marcus agreed, his voice level. "My office, 9 a.m. tomorrow." Keller nodded tersely and turned to leave. As the ballroom emptied, Richard Wilson appeared by the doorway. He had observed the entire meeting from the back. "That went well," Wilson commented as Marcus gathered his notes. "You handled their concerns better than I expected." "Most people just want honesty and respect," Marcus replied, "even when the news isn't all good." Wilson nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when I built this place, I had a vision of creating the finest hotel in the city, a place that would make people feel special, no matter who they were." He sighed. "Somewhere along the way, that vision got lost." "We'll find it again," Marcus promised. As they walked out together, Wilson asked curiously, "That receptionist who gave you trouble, Sarah, wasn't it? I noticed her taking notes during your speech. She seemed different." Marcus smiled slightly. "Sometimes people just need the right opportunity to show their better selves." By evening, word had spread throughout the hotel. The man who had been denied service was now in charge. And changes were coming fast. 2 months flew by in a whirlwind of changes at the Grand Meridian. The lobby now bustled with activity as construction crews worked on modernizing the space while maintaining its classic elegance. Staff members moved with renewed purpose, their new uniforms crisp and professional. Marcus stood by the front desk, reviewing the latest guest satisfaction scores with Sarah, who now served as the hotel's guest experience coordinator. Her promotion had raised eyebrows initially, but her dedication and insights had quickly proven his choice wise. "The numbers are up 12% from last month," Sarah reported, pointing to the data on her tablet. "That's a 28% improvement since you took over." Marcus nodded with satisfaction. "How are the new training protocols working out?" "Extremely well. The role-playing scenarios have been particularly effective in helping staff recognize and address unconscious bias," Sarah explained. She hesitated before adding, "I never realized how many small ways we were making certain guests feel unwelcome until we started analyzing the patterns." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Janet Chen, who strode confidently across the lobby. "Marcus, the board is impressed," she announced without preamble. "Revenue is up, complaints are down, and the staff turnover rate has decreased dramatically. They're considering making your position permanent rather than interim." Marcus smiled. "That's good to hear. We still have work to do, but we're making progress." "More than progress," Janet corrected. "You've transformed this place in just 2 months. Even the construction is ahead of schedule." As Janet departed for a meeting with the renovation team, Marcus noticed Robert Keller supervising the bellhops near the entrance. Their conversation the morning after the announcement had been difficult but necessary. Rather than firing Keller, Marcus had given him a choice: resign or accept a demotion and commit to the new direction of the hotel. To everyone's surprise, Keller had chosen the latter. Now, as the bellhop supervisor, he worked directly with the staff he had once instructed to discriminate against certain guests. "Mr. Johnson," Keller called, approaching with a formal nod. "The new luggage carts have arrived. They're much more maneuverable than the old ones." "Good. Have the staff been trained on them?" "Yes, sir. I've scheduled refresher training for tomorrow morning as well," Keller replied efficiently. Marcus watched him return to his duties, reflecting on the man's unexpected transformation. Keller wasn't exactly warm, but he had become scrupulously fair and professional with all guests. Sometimes change came from unexpected quarters. Later that afternoon, Marcus led a meeting with his transition team in the newly renovated executive conference room. The team consisted of representatives from every department and level of the hotel staff. The customer feedback system is working well, reported Chen Wei, a longtime housekeeper. Guests appreciate being able to rate their experience in real time, and it helps us address issues immediately. And the new diversity initiatives? Marcus asked, turning to Jasmine Torres from Human Resources. We've already seen results. Our last 3 hiring cycles brought in qualified candidates from backgrounds we weren't reaching before, Jasmine explained. The mentorship program for existing staff has 15 participants now. After the meeting, Marcus took a moment alone in his office, the same office where Richard Wilson had once sat. Wilson still visited weekly as a consultant, but increasingly his role had become that of a proud observer rather than an active advisor. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Wilson, stopping by tomorrow. Have something important to discuss. As Marcus looked out over the hotel property from his office window, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. What had begun as a routine business trip had turned into something far more meaningful. The Grand Meridian was becoming the hotel it was always meant to be, a place where excellence and respect were extended to everyone who walked through its doors. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Sarah stood in the doorway, holding a folder. "Sorry to bother you, but you should see this," she said, excitement evident in her voice. "The latest online reviews just posted. We jumped to number 3 in city rankings. People are specifically mentioning the warm welcome they receive, regardless of who they are." Marcus took the folder, a sense of quiet satisfaction washing over him. "That's what real hospitality is all about," he said simply. The hotel that had once denied him service was now becoming a beacon of inclusivity under his leadership. And this was just the beginning. 6 months after Marcus Johnson had first walked into the Grand Meridian, the hotel stood transformed. Tonight marked the grand reopening celebration following the extensive renovations. The lobby sparkled with renewed elegance, a perfect blend of classic architecture and modern design. Soft jazz played as guests in formal attire mingled, admiring the changes. Marcus moved through the crowd in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, stopping occasionally to shake hands with investors and community leaders. The local business journal had recently featured the Grand Meridian's remarkable turnaround in a front-page story. "Marcus," Richard Wilson called, making his way through the crowd. The former owner looked relaxed and 10 years younger than he had 6 months ago. "The place has never looked better." "Thanks to your foundation," Marcus replied warmly. "Your knowledge of this building saved us weeks of work during renovations." Wilson smiled, glancing around at the vibrant scene. "I'm glad I stayed on as a consultant. Watching you work has been educational." He lowered his voice. "That conversation we're supposed to have tonight, are we still on?" "Absolutely," Marcus confirmed. "My office, after the main event." As Wilson moved away to greet other guests, Sarah approached, elegant in a simple black dress, her confidence a world away from the nervous receptionist Marcus had first encountered. "Everything's running perfectly," she reported. "The mayor just arrived, and the catering team is ready for the dinner service at 8. Also, that family from Denver who had the reservation issue last week sent flowers with a thank you note. They said it was the best hotel experience they've ever had." Marcus nodded with satisfaction. "That's what we aim for. How are the new front desk staff working out?" 6 months ago, the Grand Meridian was at a crossroads, he began. "Today, we stand as the top-rated hotel in the city, not just for our beautiful renovations." He looked out at the staff members present, pride evident in his expression. This transformation wasn't about new furniture or fresh paint. It was about changing a culture. Everyone in this room played a part in that change, especially our incredible staff who embraced a new vision of what hospitality truly means. After the formal celebration wound down, Marcus made his way to his office where Richard Wilson was waiting. Janet Chen from Horizon joined them, carrying a folder of documents. "So," Marcus said, settling behind his desk, "you mentioned you had something important to discuss." Wilson exchanged glances with Janet before speaking. "I've been watching you closely these past 6 months, Marcus. What you've accomplished here is remarkable." "Thank you," Marcus replied, curious about where this was heading. "Horizon approached me last week," Wilson continued. "They're so impressed with your management that they're expanding faster than anticipated. They want to acquire 3 more properties in the region." Janet nodded. which means we need someone to oversee all Horizon properties in this area, a regional director. Marcus raised his eyebrows. And you're offering me the position? Yes, Janet confirmed. You would supervise all Horizon hotels in the region, including the Grand Meridian. It's a significant promotion. Marcus sat back, taking in this unexpected development. I'm honored, but who would manage the Grand Meridian day to day? Wilson leaned forward. That's the other part of what I wanted to discuss. I'd like to nominate Sarah for the general manager position. She's shown extraordinary growth and understands the vision completely. I agree, Marcus said without hesitation. She's more than ready. As the three discussed the details of the transition, Marcus couldn't help reflecting on the irony of his journey. He had walked into this hotel as an unwelcome guest, faced discrimination at the front desk, and now found himself responsible for transforming not just one hotel but potentially several. The next morning, Marcus called Sarah into his office and shared the news of her promotion. Her eyes filled with tears of disbelief and gratitude. I don't know what to say, she stammered. From nearly losing my job to becoming the general manager in 6 months. You earned it, Marcus assured her. Sometimes life gives us unexpected second chances. The real measure of a person is what they do with those chances. As they walked through the lobby together, Marcus observed the bustling activity with satisfaction. The Grand Meridian had become what it was always meant to be, a place where every guest was valued, where excellence was the standard, and where a mistake had transformed into an opportunity for growth that nobody could have anticipated. What had begun with a receptionist denying service had ended with a complete transformation, not just of a hotel, but of the people within it.